And Canada insists it's part of the U.S.
Well, why do we come here on our vacation?
Because after 2 weeks in Mussolini, any place else in the world seems like heaven.
Send me to Siberia, send me to Wilkes-Barre, but not Mussolini.
No, Badenov, don't lose your head.
I'm not losing my head.
You will if you don't go to Mussolini.
What time leaves the next submarine?
But just then there was a splintering crash as something flew in through the window. Something with antlers.
On top of something with an aviator's helmet.
It's a moose and a squirrel, Admiral. They must have been blown here by the depth charge.
Then they're enemy agents. Seize them. And our heroes were quickly subdued.
I was pretty subdued when we started.
All right, you. What was the name of your submarine?
Submarine? Hokey Smoke.
Got that, Carruthers? We sank the Hokey Smoke.
For many years, all the men who go down to the sea in ships, sailors, fishermen, garbage scow captains, have heard and repeated the story of the legendary whaling whale, Moby Dick. Moby Dick was supposed to be big enough to swallow a whole ship. Maybe. He could swim faster than any vessel in the sea. Maybe. And he had been seen by sailors whose reputations for sobriety were beyond reproach. Maybe. Yes, for centuries, Moby Dick has been a shadowy terror for all seafaring men.
Pretty exciting, eh, Rock?
Oh, that's just an old wives' tale, Bullwinkle.
Old wives with whiskers?
I mean, it's just make-believe.
Make-believe?
Sure. There's no such thing as a whaling whale.
Well, if you can't believe what you read in the comic books, what can you believe?
Oh, Bullwinkle.
It's enough to destroy a young moose's faith.
Oh, come on. There just couldn't be such a thing.
It'd sure make a good premise for a story, though.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Our story begins over 3 decades ago. They were much simpler times then. The world didn't seem as complicated as it is today, nor did the people. The children of the baby boom generation were growing up in an environment that, on the surface, seemed ordered and secure. It was in many ways a carefree time when Americans looked to the future with hope and optimism. Our President, Dwight D. Eisenhower, the leader of the free world, was the general who led us to victory in World War II, and a man who enjoyed a good game of golf. The leader of communist Russia, our archenemy, was Nikita Khrushchev, a short, balding, bombastic man who kept threatening to bury the free world. He made a perfect villain for the American people. Khrushchev's partner in crime was the dictator of Cuba, Fidel Castro, a man who Americans feared and a person who many of us felt needed a shower and a shave. Now, despite the Cold War, this was a time when our cultural horizons were being lifted higher and higher. To the relief of many American parents, that hip-shaking rock and roller Elvis Presley had been drafted into the Army and shipped overseas, away from their kids. This was also a time when science and technology looked to be the cure-all for our ills. Man was, for the first time, reaching out into space, although judging by our first efforts, it didn't look as though we'd ever get there. To children growing up in this era, it was, above all else, the golden age of television. Of all the great TV programs of this era, who can ever forget the one show that poked and prodded at your youthful sensibilities and challenged your still developing mind? A show that lifted us out of the day-to-day realities of a changing world. Indeed, a show that gave us 2 characters who will live forever in the annals of television history and in our hearts and minds. Rocket J. Squirrel and Bullwinkle J. Moose.
And our heroes blithely rode straight into frightful danger. Oh, what foul fiend could do a trick like that? What venal villain? What perfidious scoundrel?
Allow me to introduce myself. Boris Badenov at your service.
Yes, it was true. The mysterious stranger was Boris Badenov, the world's lowest snake in the grass.
Please, no more compliments. You'll turn my pretty hair.
Hello? Rocky the Flying Squirrel speaking. Oh, it's for you, Bullwinkle. Somebody else wants a weather forecast.
Oh, Baz Stairs. Just when I was catching up on my reading.
The Bobbsey twins at the seashore.
Yeah, you can't beat the classics, I only say. Hello. Now, everybody raise their right hands and repeat after me. I solemnly swear to be honest, loyal, brave, clean, and trustworthy.
Just a minute, buddy.
Something wrong?
Wrong? Oh, boy. What is this honest, brave, and loyal stuff?
It's the new fan club oath.
Maybe later on it mentions sly, nasty, and vile?
Nope. Just honest, brave, clean, loyal, and trustworthy.
And now, for all you senior students who are just about to graduate, here are some words of wisdom from Mr. Know-It-All.
Buenos dias, senors. Today's lecture is entitled, How to Catch a Bee and Make Your Honey Happy.
It was a series unlike anything that had come before it. It starred a moronic moose, an all-American squirrel, a pair of bumbling spies, and a truly oddball assortment of supporting characters.
For many years, all the men who go down to the sea in ships, sailors, fishermen, garbage scow captains, have heard and repeated the story of the legendary whaling whale, Maybe Dick. Maybe Dick was supposed to be big enough to swallow a whole ship. Maybe. He could swim faster than any vessel in the sea. Maybe. And he had been seen by sailors whose reputations for sobriety were beyond reproach. Maybe. Yes, for centuries, Maybe Dick has been a shadowy terror for all seafaring men.
Pretty exciting, eh, Rock?
Oh, that's just an old wives' tale, Bullwinkle.
Old wives with whiskers?
I mean, it's just make-believe.
Make-believe?
Sure. There's no such thing as a whaling whale.
Well, if you can't believe what you read in the comic books, what can you believe?
Oh, Bullwinkle.
It's enough to destroy a young moose's faith.
Oh, come on. There just couldn't be such a thing.
It'd sure make a good premise for a story, though.
Perry discovered the North Pole, Amundsen the South. However, neither of these esteemed explorers would have had much success finding Frostbite Falls, Minnesota in the dead of winter. Incidentally, that's it, that steeple sticking up out of the snow. Now, with the town submerged under 30 or 40 feet of the soft white stuff, you might wonder how its inhabitants managed to dig their way out. Well, they don't. They rely completely on a snowplow. A snowplow with antlers.
Spring will be a trifle late this fall.
There was something particular about the tone of the Bullwinkle cartoons, the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons, that really set them apart for kids then and for, you know, kids grown up looking back today, because they had an edge to them, they had a satiric thrust to them, and they had an irreverence to them that really was unlike anything else that we were seeing on TV.
The creative force behind this unique series was producer Jay Ward and veteran animator and writer Bill Scott. Jay Ward, who started out in the real estate business, had his first TV success with an animated series, Crusader Rabbit. Ward then joined with Bill Scott, and together they assembled a creative team that became famous for its ability to combine social satire, outright silliness, and world-class puns.
Well, our heroes are really closing in on the mooseberry bush, for they've hired a famous mountain climber, Sir Hilary Push-Em-Off, and his friend, the Indian guide, Princess Bubbles, to guide them up the Grimalaya Mountains. Little do they know, however, that the guides are really those two spies, Boris and Natasha.
Please, you're giving away the plot.
Well, Sir Hilary, here's where we're going, high on the slopes of Why Don't You Take a Peek?
Why don't you take a peek?
What is new assignment, Boris? Kill moose?
No, steal formula.
What formula?
Who cares? Any formula.
Boris couldn't have picked a better day to look for a formula, for in another part of the city, one Dr. Bermuda Schwartz was testing his new invention for the Army.
Now, when I push this plunger, that bridge over there is going to blow up with 1,000,000 pieces.
Very well, Doctor. Let it go.
Amazing, that bridge blew up without a sound.
I thought you'd notice that.
Congratulations, Doctor. You have invented the first silent explosive.
I call it hush-a-boom. And you've got to admit, it's a little bit different.
There's no question about it. Ask any senior citizen residing in Frostbite Falls what the major event of the year is, and he'll reply...
The Frostbite Falls Flotilla Festival.
And why is that?
Because all the noisy kids are down at Veronica Lake.
Where'd you get that thing?
What thing?
What it is you're about to launch?
And the starry-eyed moose related the story in flashback form of how one day, while ambling along the Old Rocks Road, he stumbled onto an ancient rust-encrusted dhow.
How about that?
A dhow, spelled D-H-O-W, is a sailing vessel primarily used in the Red Sea and Indian Ocean.
Whoa, look at it sparkle.
And looky here on the binnacle rock.
That's the bow. It says Omar
Goodness.
Khayyam. Omar Khayyam. Hokey smokes, what do you suppose it means?
Do you know what you have here?
We were hoping that you'd tell us.
This little dhow here is composed of ruby. Yes, sir, it's rubies.
No, it isn't. It's mine.
Well, my gosh, if it's made out of rubies, then...
If you're hesitating for me to finish the line, you've got a long wait.
And I don't have the guts to say it.
Okay, then here goes. If it's made out of rubies, then this must be the ruby yacht of Omar Khayyam.
And with that little gem, we ring down the curtain. What does fate have in the jewelry store? Be with us next time for Let's Drink to the Ruby or Stoned Again.
Jay was unusual. He was very shy, oddly. But he thrived on other people's eccentricities, and he wanted to have himself thought of as being eccentric, which is a little difficult when you're shy.
I didn't know you knew how to type, Bullwinkle.
Nothing to it.
Clee bully ferglers up, pretty eagle.
Of course, that's just the first draft.
Look, Chief, hot scoops. Mysterious bomber demolishes warehouse. Mad fiend burns old folks' home.
Express train derailed. Great reporting, Boris. When did these happen?
Any time now. I'm working on it.
Jay Ward was a genius. I mean, there's no getting away from that. You got to remember that he did create the first animated show to ever appear on TV, Crusader Rabbit, which is still a classic of sorts. And the man had a way of looking at things that was slightly, left of center. No matter what he looked at, it was always through an eye that wanted to laugh at it. He never wanted to take anything straight.
Hello, poetry pals. I'm wearing this Old Mother Hubbard because today's poem is Old Mother Hubbard. Pretty slick, huh? Old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard to get her poor dog a bone. But when she got there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor dog got none.
Hold it. You mean after 5 years of watchdog and I don't get a bone?
That's what the poem says.
That does it. I'm going on strike.
On strike?
I'll pull out every pooch from Pottsville to Paducah. Mother Hubbard unfair to canine.
But
she's anti-dog.
No, I'm Mother Hubbard.
Jay was a very congenial, amiable man. But besides being that, he was a very perspicacious man. He knew precisely what he wanted. He never interviewed actors. He knew whom he wanted. He knew what we could do to deliver precisely the fashion that he created.
Ollie!
Oof! Oh, I got it!
Gee, not so hard, Bullwinkle. That's the third pass receiver we've lost today.
We don't lose him, Rock. They pick him up in the next county.
But passing wasn't Bullwinkle's only football talent. When he put his head down and charged, he could take out one whole side of the opposing line.
That's what I like, a player who uses his head.
It's also good for hanging hats on.
Came time for Wasamatayu's first game with the Watchmakers Technical Institute.
Or as it is known, tick-tock-tick.
Bill Scott was a man who was in many ways the complete opposite of Jay Ward. Whereas Ward often shunned public appearances, Bill Scott was a performer and did many of the characters' voices, including Bullwinkle.
When I wrote the first pilot for the Bullwinkle show, I wrote it for Jay Ward. Jay Ward is a functional illiterate, and so I used to read things to him instead of having him read them. And he would laugh hilariously and fall on the floor, which was all very gratifying. And then we recorded the pilot. When we recorded the pilot, we were in a little recording studio. Here is June Foray, one of the finest voice actresses in the world. Here is Paul Frees, who was the voice of everybody. And there is me, and we're assigning parts, and I said to Jay, well, who's going to do Bullwinkle? And he said, oh, I thought you were. So with that remarkable bit of casting, I became the voice of Bullwinkle, and then also the voice of Dudley Do-Right of the Mounties, and Mr. Peabody of Peabody's Improbable History, and a number of others in the entire J. Ward canon from that point on.
Well, Bill Scott was in many ways the heart and soul of those shows, as much as Jay was. They were quite a formidable team.
Scott was also a deeply religious and charitable man. He held very liberal political beliefs, while his partner, Jay Ward, was quite the conservative. But the one thing they had in common was a very irreverent sense of humor.
Once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs.
That's capital P-I-double-G-S.
Yes, of course. These 3 little pigs, Portland, Penelope, and Alice, were sisters who lived together in a cunning little house, or they did for a while anyway.
Is this the pig residence?
Capital P-I-double-G, pig?
That's it, lady.
Yes, it is.
Got a singing telegram for you. Put on the skillet, put on the lid. Your rich uncle just wound up dead.
What?
That ain't all, I tell you true. He left $1 million to you.
Oh, great.
And all the little piggies got moolah, moolah. All the little piggies got moolah now. Collect.
Bill was as outgoing and gregarious as Jay was shy. They made a wonderful team. Old William, as Jay used to call him. Old William will do this, old William do that. And they got along great, and they kidded each other all the time. And they were just this marvelous roly-poly team. You know, they were both a little overweight, and more than a little overweight. And they were the Tweedledum and Tweedledee of the cartoon world. And I remember one day I was sort of sulking around, and Bill stuck his head in and says, what's the matter? And I said, well, Bill, I said, I'm 25 years old and I'm writing for a damn moose, you know. Bill says, you think you've got it bad? He says, I'm 48 years old and I am one.
Oh, I hate my uncle, but I love my antlers, 'cause antlers are a moose's best friend. Hey, Rock!
Huh? What is it, Bullwinkle?
Hand me my shower cap, will you?
Yeah, here you are.
Thanks. Anything I can't stand is wet horns.
Of the 2 main characters in the show, Rocky the Squirrel and Bullwinkle, Rocky was the straight man, or straight squirrel, if you will. Indeed, he was the first squirrel to become an all-American hero.
Is this the health department?
Of course. Open your mouth and say ah.
But...
Not but, say ah.
Ah.
Hold it. You need glasses.
I have glasses.
So you do.
You see, my buddy and his bunion were swiped.
Swiped? Have you tried the FBI?
No, but I will. Is this the...
We'll ask the questions, Philip. Name?
Rocky.
Occupation?
I'm a squirrel.
Problem?
My buddy, his bunion, swiped.
Tried missing persons?
I was already there.
Well, that's the nice thing about Washington.
What's that?
You always travel in the right circles.
So I said, well, what kind of a character is Rocky the Flying Squirrel? He said, just a plain little boy, but he said, I want him caricatured a little bit. So I said, well, how about something like this? You know, maybe he's a little petulant at times, but anyway, that's the way he should be. And Jay said, oh, that's marvelous.
Sure is dark in here.
Yeah, I can't see my hand in front of my face.
You don't have your hand in front of your face.
Well, I said I couldn't see it.
Look ahead there, Bullwinkle.
Sure enough, at the end of the passage, light shone through a crack in the door.
Sounds like voices in there, Bullwinkle.
Yeah.
Put your ear to the door and listen.
Unfortunately, the only way Bullwinkle could put his ear to the door was to put his antlers through the door, which is just what he did.
Run, Bullwinkle!
I can't. My head bone is stuck.
And in a moment, the door was flung wide, dragging Bullwinkle into the room.
Hokey smoke, Bullwinkle, look!
Well, what dreadful sight has driven the roses from Rocky's cheeks? We'll see next time in Doorway to Danger, or Doom in the Room.
When the series was being created, no one could know at the time that the one character who would in his own way become an American icon, the one character who would capture the imagination of America's youth, was a moronic moose named Bullwinkle. he developed a cult following around the nation.
Hi, poetry people. Today's poem is the saga of a singing waiter, Tommy Tucker. That's me. Little Tommy Tucker sings for his supper. What shall he have? Brown bread and butter. How shall he...
Waiter?
Sir?
How's the Irish stew tonight?
Oh, the taters are old and the meat is a fright. Everything is left over from Saturday night. We sweep it all up, put it into a pot, and tell you it's real Irish stew that we got.
What about the chicken liver?
Way down upon the Swanee River, far, far away, 2, 3, 4. There, they embalm our chicken liver, and that's what you get today.
Bullwinkle was just an unassuming moose, like any other moose. And yet he became a moose among men, a giant among lesser moose, and above all, he became, for reasons that defy explanation, a genuine American hero.
Oh, if I could be anyone in the world, there'd be no brighter star to twinkle. Oh, if I could be anyone in the world, I'd be happy to be. Oh, so happy to be. I'd be happy to be.
Hokey Smoke, be sure to stay tuned as we cover the Cold War from Frostbite Falls and then go off in search of the fabled Kerwood Derby. But first, we'll pay tribute to our cast of fine supporting players. And speaking of supporting players, it's time for you to take a role and support public television. So, boys and girls, get to those phones and call.
There is a seldom honored, yet vitally important group of hard-working actors whose job it is to make the stars shine bigger and brighter. They are, of course, the supporting players. Every star has them. Lucy and Ricky had Fred and Ethel. Rob and Laura Petrie had Buddy and Sally. Ralph and Alice had Trixie and Ed Norton. As far as our heroes Rocky and Bullwinkle were concerned, they attracted a veritable creme de la creme of supporting characters. In essence, the Mercury players of the cartoon world. Foremost among these players was that intellectual dog, Mr. Peabody, and his boy, Sherman. Via Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine, he and Sherman took us on some, shall we say, unique historical adventures.
Hello there, Peabody here. And this is the Wayback Machine for traveling through time. And this is my boy, Sherman. Speak, Sherman.
Hello.
Good boy. And today we visit Napoleon. Peabody here. Sherman and I had a date with Florence.
Florence who, Mr. Peabody?
Florence, Italy, Sherman. Today the Wayback Machine will take us back to the year 1506 to a small studio in Florence where we'll visit that great genius of the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci. Peabody here. Today, Sherman and I are going back to the year 64 A.D. to visit with one of history's most renowned violinists.
Jack Benny?
No, that would be 39 A.D., Sherman. Our illustrious fiddler was none other than the Emperor of Rome, Nero. We set the Wayback Controls, and before you could say quo vadis, we were standing on the steps of Nero's palace.
Mr. Peabody, I've always felt came out of Clifton Webb because he was smug and snide and condescending. And the voice was a dead ringer.
Well, for a kid who's, suffering through history classes in school, to watch Mr. Peabody and Sherman go into the Wayback Machine and have experiences with these same historical characters, well, it wasn't supposed to be an educational cartoon in any way, but it was educational because it was making references to things that might ring a bell, or that might clarify something, or even in a humorous and backhanded way, give you some insight into the person that you were supposed to be learning about.
Peabody here, and for you poetry lovers, today's excursion into yesteryear will be a highly informative one.
Are we going to visit Ogden Nash, Mr. Peabody?
No, Sherman, the poetic personality we will tete-a-tete with is none other than William Shakespeare.
Now playing a new play by Will Shakespeare, Romeo and Zelda. Romeo and Zelda?
Must be a misprint, but it wasn't, for inside the play was in rehearsal, and...
Zelda, wherefore art thou, Zelda?
Instead of appearing on the balcony, Juliet, or rather Zelda, came marching out of the wings carrying a large flower pot. She left the stage and went directly to a familiar figure who was sitting all alone in the front row.
That must be William Shakespeare, Mr. Peabody. And look, she's going to present him with a flower.
She presented him with a flower, all right. Pot and all.
That'll teach you to steal my play.
It's a man wearing a disguise.
Francis Bacon, if I'm not mistaken, and I never am.
Bacon, you'll fry for this.
Oh, hark, what hollow light burneth in yonder patio.
Egad, the lad's an ad-libber.
Verily, I shall ascendeth yon balcony and meet my beloved.
Easy with your big toe, Sherman. You're crushing my collarbone.
Zelda, I mean Juliet. Thou art wherefore, Juliet?
You can well imagine Sherman's dismay when, instead of a lovely young maiden, a lovely young lion appeared. In one prodigious sequence, each cat left the balcony and proceeded to empty the theater. He then turned on us.
Run for your lives, the performance is cancelled.
Quick, Mr. Peabody!
No need to panic. We'll simply ring the curtain down.
Oh, the tragedy of it all, that this should happen to me. If I ever found the rogue who owned that beast.
That beast is mine.
Bacon.
With eggs.
Every Peabody episode ended with a terrible pun. That Peabody would say something outrageous so that the boy, Sherman, would respond with, oh my, that's terrible, that's awful.
The only thing I don't understand is why Mr. McSnide wanted to change the rules of golf.
Well, you see, McSnide objected to the use of a golf ball.
What did he expect to play with?
Potatoes. He owned a potato farm and hoped to make a fortune selling them to golfers.
But who ever heard of hitting a potato with a golf club?
Oh, come now, Sherman. Surely you've heard of mashy potatoes? Pass the gravy. And because of his poor eyesight, a cause of eye trouble was named after him.
A cause for eye trouble was named after William Tell? What's that, Mr. Peabody?
Why, television, of course.
Isaac Newton's brother Figby? What's he famous for?
Oh, he invented a cookie.
Oh, Mr. Peabody, you don't mean...
I certainly do. Figby Newton was the inventor of the Fig Newton.
Another supporting character who played a major role in the success of Rocky and Bullwinkle was that fearless, wholesome, brave, handsome, sensitive, do-gooding, idiotic, totally moronic, guardian of the North, Dudley Do-Right.
Don't worry. As you know, the Canadian Mounties always get their man. You see, here comes a mountain now.
Nell! Nell! I did as you said. I got my man.
Dudley, how many times have I got to tell you? This is a dog. This is the man.
Oh, all right. You're under arrest.
No, not this man. Oh, well, never mind.
This is about the squarest Mountie I've ever seen.
That's right, sir. Square shooting Dudley Do-Right at your service.
Dudley, how do you feel about Lawrence Welk?
Only terrific, Inspector. That's real toe-tapping music.
I've always loved the Dudley because Jay said I was modeled after him. Well, he was modeled after me. But if you look at Dudley, he looked like a great Mountie should look. He was the perfect-looking Mountie, but he was a complete moron. I mean, the guy, was the village idiot. That's the interesting thing about Dudley Do-Right is that the Bullwinkle show is shown throughout the world. They made all kinds of foreign deals. The one place that they weren't able to sell it is in Canada because whomever deals with the Canadian broadcasting, people who buy for them, felt that the caricature of a Mountie would be harmful to the image of the Mounties, and therefore they never were allowed to show it.
Most of the Dudley Do-Rights I took great pride in because I still am an old silent movie fan, and that's what I tried to do with Dudley Do-Right, was do the iris in, the iris out with the satirical titles, and then even the names, Snidely Whiplash, things of that nature. I thought those were quite unique and very special and very funny.
In his fight against crime in the Great White North, Dudley Do-Right faced the despicable Snidely Whiplash, who was as evil as Dudley was good. The voice of Snidely was veteran character actor Hans Conried.
And if there is anyone present who objects to this union, let him speak now.
The gentleman about to object is Dudley's lifelong enemy, the malevolent Snidely Whiplash.
I don't know what it means, but I object. Whiplash, you cur. So you would ruin my wedding, eh? As a staffer, yes.
Dudley picked up the thing nearest to him, which happened to be Nell, and threw it.
Aha! I have her, and you shall never get her back, or any other part of her.
And the voice of Dudley's girlfriend, Nell, whom Snidely wanted for his own, but who, unbeknownst to anyone, was in love with Dudley's horse, whose name was, Horse, was played by June Foray.
Little Nell, he said, well, just do anything you want for little Nell. And I had done his voice when I was very young. I was about 12 years old, and I thought I was being very sophisticated using a voice like that, and I thought that would be wonderful for little Nell.
Oh, save me! Save me! Somebody save me!
Don't go all to pieces, Nell. Wait about 5 seconds.
It looked like Nell Fenwick's wick was about to be extinguished when...
The jig is up, Whiplash!
Dudley, the saw! Pull the lever!
He pulled the lever all right, but the one that said free-wheeling. The saw rotated madly, broke free of its moorings, and ate its way around the mill.
I created a Frankenstein!
Within 5 minutes, the sawmill had been reduced to sawdust. As for Whiplash, he was last seen heading in the general direction of downtown Toronto, closely followed by the saw.
Oh, Dudley, my hero!
Nell, my heroine!
Not only did each Bullwinkle and Rocky show bring us the adventures of Peabody and Sherman, as well as Dudley, Nell, and Snidely, we were also treated to a rather twisted look at the venerable fairy tales we all grew up with in the segment entitled Fractured Fairy Tales.
Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Goldilocks who, for no other reason besides wanting to get rich, decided to go into business for herself. Taking all the money that she had earned as a chimney sweep, she purchased a large lodge high up in the mountains and set about the task of turning it into a winter resort. She worked very hard getting things ready for the happy, money-bearing crowds that were soon to come, and then, at last, she was done. It was opening day, and she flung open the doors.
Welcome to Goldie's, winter vacationers.
But alas, not one single winter vacationer showed up, for unfortunately, Goldilocks had overlooked one little detail. She had opened her winter resort in the summer.
Oh, drat.
Once upon a time, in a city far away, lived a kindly old woodcarver named Geppetto. His workshop was in the poorer section of town. It was very tiny, and his only tool was a crude jackknife.
Boy, this whittling sure gets to be a drag. Look at me talking to a pine-topper dummy. Oh, if you was only a real kid. I could get you a paper route somewhere. Take it easy for a while.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Red who had an exclusive shop in the Hollywoods where she sold riding hoods.
That's why they call me Red Riding Hood. Cute.
One day, a very wealthy customer entered her shop.
Oh, boy. Yes, madam, may I help you?
I should like to buy a wolfskin riding hood.
Wolfskin?
Yes.
Meanwhile, not too far away, a mother wolf was calling to her son.
Walter!
Yes, Mama, honey?
I want you to take this basket to Grandma's house right away.
But she was here only yesterday and took a whole basket of stuff.
I know, but she forgot her teeth.
There was a section of the show called Fractured Fairy Tales. And so I got the one to do called Sleeping Beauty Land. That story concerned a prince who had a castle, and he had secured this Sleeping Beauty and had her ensconced up in the castle, and he threw it open to the public and sold tickets, and it was a takeoff on Disneyland, you see, and I caricatured the prince as Walt Disney.
You all remember the story of Sleeping Beauty? How as a baby she was put under a spell by a wicked fairy, how when she had grown up she pricked her finger with a needle and fell into a deep sleep from which she could be wakened only by a kiss. You remember, too, how a fence of thorns grew round the castle to prevent anybody from entering.
Anybody but me, that is.
And just who are you?
A prince, naturally. Don't you see the robes, the crown? You want to see my ID card?
Well, how do you propose to enter the castle?
Easy. I haul out my trusty broadsword and... They don't make broadswords like they used to. Sleeping Beauty, I've come at last. With one kiss, I shall waken you and... Wait a minute. Awake, she's just another princess. Asleep, she's a gold mine. I can see it now. Sleeping Beauty comics Sleeping Beauty hats, Sleeping Beauty bubble gum, and biggest of all, Sleeping Beauty Land.
Sure enough, the castle was soon made ready as a great tourist attraction. There was Moat Land.
Have your X-coupons ready, please. Have your X-coupons ready.
There was Entrance Hall Land.
Y coupons, please.
There was Stair Land.
That's a Z coupon, folks. A Z coupon.
And, of course, Sleeping Beauty herself. Sleeping Beauty Land was clearly a great success.
When the writers on the series ran out of actual fairy tales to work with, it posed no problem whatsoever. They did what any astute television writer would do in that situation. They made up their own.
Oh, how are you, dear?
Enchanted.
Gargling doesn't help, huh?
Ooh, gargling, aspirins, mustard plasters, nothing.
Maybe if I stepped on your cat's tail.
Are you out of your mind?
I didn't think it was a good idea.
But as King Dumb turned to go...
Is this where I get changed into a frog?
Worse than that, fella. Let me look. You will marry the queen and have a son with a nose like a cassava melon. And until he says to the world, I got a nose like a cassava melon, he'll have a nose like a cassava melon. You got that?
Oh, it seems a little harsh.
But if anybody tells him the magic words ahead of time, they shall perish, like instantly. Understand?
Is it over? Am I a frog?
I don't think so, dear.
No, he wasn't. And what's more, the queen was no longer under her enchantment. And so the king married the queen, and they lived happily ever after until their first son was born, at which time the king turned into a frog and was never heard from again.
You know, I sort of expected this all along.
It can be said without question that no one was safe when it came to satire and humor in the Bullwinkle and Rocky show. Everyone was a target. Politicians, movie stars, athletes, historical figures, literary giants, television personalities. It just didn't matter.
Hello out there in TV land. Welcome to the big Bullwinkle and Rocky Fan Club benefit telethon. Yes, sir, you're going to see such names as Bob Hope, Marlon Brando, Jane Mansfield, and Terry Como. But that's all you're going to see, their names. For guests, we've got Rocky J. Squirrel, Boris Benanov is going to be really big shoe, and our telephone girl, Natasha Patel. The number to call with your donations is Sucker 92222, or if that's busy, call Shakedown 56565. That's the Chinese restaurant downstairs. They'll take a message.
We offended nations, countries, politicians, school teachers, weather people, no matter what, you know.
And here, with his bird's eye view and a brain to match, is Mr. Know-It-All.
Our subject for today is how to be a beatnik. Some people think the beatnik is merely a bum with sunglasses, but he is more than that. Though not much. The first step in becoming a beatnik is to grow a beard. This can be a long process, particularly if you're a girl. Clothing-wise, we should remember this important rule. The well-dressed beatnik is seldom neatnik.
But everybody was under Jay's satirical eye. He and Scott had that, because they were such opposite points of view in terms of the political thinking. Then they would attack the right, the left. It didn't matter. They would just anybody who was pompous, without humor, businesslike was always could be scalped by those guys.
One of the most famous running jokes in the Bullwinkle show concerned a television personality named Durwood Kirby. Kirby first became famous as the co-host of the Gary Moore Show, and then moved on to co-host the hit series Candid Camera. Using the name Durwood Kirby, the creative team came up with a storyline that revolved around the search for the fabled Kerwood Derby.
Here is the ultimate weapon. That's a weapon? That's the weapon. But that's just a derby hat. Not just a derby hat, bad enough. This is the Kerwood Derby. The Kerwood Derby? Quiet, you fool. The Kerwood Derby. Jawohl.
And Phyllis Leader told Boris the legend of the fabulous bowler. The Kerwood Derby had first been owned by a cave dweller many eons ago who put it on and said...
Pardon me, my dear. I've got something to do.
Like what?
I'm going to invent the wheel.
And he did. Later on, it was owned by a man named Aristotle, who one day in his bath cried,
Eureka! I have found it!
You found Aristotle's law of displacement and specific gravity?
No, you idiot. I found it so. The Kerwood Derby was won by Philip of Macedonia when he conquered the world, and by Genghis Khan when he conquered the world, and by Julius Caesar when he conquered the world, and by Elvis Presley when he... Oh, never mind. It disappeared for a time, but its last known owner was a Princeton college professor who put it on and said...
Of course, E equals MC squared. Why didn't I think of that before?
Yes, the Kerwood Derby turns anyone who wears it into the smartest man in the world.
And they got this lawyer's letter from Derwood Kirby, who was a big TV star at the time. And Jay sent them back a letter saying, yeah, please sue us. You know, we need the publicity. Anything will help. Of course, we never heard from them again.
Once my head is under that hat, bad enough.
You'll be smart.
What?
I mean smarter, dear old chiefy boy, honeypot, superior officer Dow.
Bad enough you're making my cuffs soggy.
Sorry.
And what happens when your fearless leader is all-powerful?
Pennsylvania rules the world.
The world sank deeper and deeper into the Cold War. The world may have taken the Cold War quite seriously, but the creators of Rocky and Bullwinkle didn't. Their answer to the Cold War was the creation of the arch spies from Pennsylvania, Boris Badenov and Natasha Fatal. Boris and Natasha were thinly disguised characters of Russian spies. For reasons never made quite clear, these two bungling spies spent all their time trying to thwart our heroes, Rocky and Bullwinkle. They never quite succeeded.
Yodeldly-doddly, hoddly-ho! Allow me to introduce myself, Sir Hilary Pushemoff at your service. Come down, princess.
Who's that?
That is famous Indian guide, Princess Bubbling Spring that runs in the meadow.
Call me Bubbles.
I got low standards, you know. Come, Natasha, we start our own outfit. The Boris Badenov Fan Club. Well, what do you think of the new clubhouse?
He's a real eyesore, Boris.
You really think so? You're not just saying that to make me feel good?
Oh, I wouldn't kid you, darling. With little work, it could be blight our whole community.
Think big, Natasha. We'll have Boris Badenov fan clubs blemishing whole country. New chapters festering up everywhere.
How do we do this, Boris?
How else? Advertise on television. Feeling grouchy, irritable, nasty, then Boris's fan club needs you. Modern-day clean living got you down. Want to strike a blow for foul play? Then join Boris Badenov Beast Corps.
This was a paid fanatical announcement.
Double your pleasure, double your fun. Join Boris's fan club and learn hit and run.
You know, there were those implications that a lot of the stuff about Boris and Natasha were inspired, and there was some kind of sinister CIA infiltration into our ranks to make the Russians look bad. I mean, nothing could have been more ridiculous than to suggest that.
Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie.
Boris, they're crazy about Moose's singing.
Well, two can play at that game. Natasha, hand me my belly like and my big cheese disguise.
Here, darling.
Me.
And then began one of the strangest battles of all time, a musical contest to capture the affection of 100,000 moon mice.
You ain't nothing but the moon mouse, munching all the time.
Come along to Auntie Skinner's chicken dinner, the one who picks a wishbone.
All I ask is don't step on my blue suede tail.
There must be little cupies in the briny. There must be little cupies in the sea.
You're my little high school moon mouse.
Bullwinkle, look! Your audience is leaving you.
Looks like your singing career's over already.
Man, that was the shortest career I ever had.
Yes, the moon mice were leaving the boys' cottage and heading right for Boris.
Looks like you've won, darling.
What I told you, Natasha. You can't keep a good rat down.
Boris Badenov and Natasha Fatal represented everything that was evil and anti-American. They were, as Boris himself would have proudly put it, a couple of no-goodniks. Boris's voice was done by actor Paul Frees, and Natasha was voiced by the multi-talented June Foray.
So I said, well, how would you like Natasha? He said, don't make her Russian. He said, she's not a Russian spy. She and Boris are from Pennsylvania. because, as you know, Russia thought that we started the Cold War with them. They were very incensed about that. So we tried to make it a Pennsylvania accent.
Boo-hoo-hoo! Hold it, Bullwinkle. That sounds like a lady in distress.
So?
Gee, didn't you ever read the Hero's Handbook?
I can never get past the picture of General MacArthur on the cover.
Well, Chapter 2 says we should always help ladies in distress.
Hi there, lady. Are you in distress?
Distress, that dress, who cares? I'm distraught.
Do we help ladies in distraught?
What's the trouble? It's about next Saturday's game.
With Hard Knocks College. Don't worry, we'll mobilize them.
That's just it. My little brother is on that team.
Your brother?
Crazy Legs Kalbfuss. And if Hard Knocks doesn't win Saturday, they'll throw him off the team.
Gee.
They'll take away his sweater.
And it's turning cool, too.
They won't even let him watch American Bandstand.
Is there no pity anywhere?
So, you're great, big, wonderful moose.
That's me, all right.
Maybe you could see to it that Hard Knocks wins next Saturday.
Why not?
Bullwinkle, you can't do that.
I'm supposed to help ladies in distress.
But Chapter 3 says you never throw a game.
Well, if you read your chapter, I'll read mine. What was that you called me, Missy?
A great, big, wonderful schnook.
Well, Jay and Bill encountered many problems with the NBC. They were called standards and practices. And in fact, Bill used to say to me that they have a policy for not doing something. They never have a policy for doing anything. It's always not doing anything.
I know one of the times they had Sam the Native, who was Bill Conrad. Well, anyway, he had Bullwinkle and Rocky in a pot. He was going to make a stew out of them. And one of the network people called Jay and said, "You can't have cannibalism on the show." And Jay said, "A moose and a squirrel?"
And meanwhile, what of Rocky himself? Well, he's tied to a stake in the middle of a mesa, awaiting heaven knows what.
Yeah, what are we waiting for?
We wait for Big Chief.
It's pretty cold out here, you know.
No worry. We build fire for you.
And our hero's captor set fire to a pile of branches on which he was standing.
Hey, you can't do that.
Who say?
The network say, quote, "No cannibalism on TV," unquote.
We don't eat you, just roast you.
Oh, well, I guess that's okay then.
And the network-approved flames licked higher and higher. Don't miss our next episode, The Fire Chaser, or Bullwinkle Goes to Blazes.
Of Jay Ward's many talents, perhaps he was best at creative publicity for Bullwinkle and Rocky. In 1963, he and East Coast press agent Alan Foshko put on the first and last Coney Island Film Festival, attracting over 4,000 fans. But maybe his most famous stunt was the building and then unveiling of a 15-foot statue of Bullwinkle and Rocky that stands proudly on busy Sunset Boulevard.
He was promotional-minded in those days because he was going to take Sunset Boulevard and block it off and put up this huge grandstand and put bands up there and just celebrate.
Bill and Jay wore top hat and evening clothes, but tennis shoes. Jay had an album composed of Musylvania's fight songs, gave away straw hats with Bullwinkle antlers coming out of them, and got Jane Mansfield to do the ribbon pulling.
Jay Ward had this incredible mailing list, and he would do all sorts of things. He had a statehood for Musylvania kit. He actually bought an island off the coast of Minnesota and named it Musylvania. And then he decided that he was going to have a campaign to have it adopted for statehood.
Armed with a petition signed by thousands of people, Jay Ward and publicist Howard Brandy set off on a nationwide tour to campaign for Musylvania's statehood.
And so we got this van, this Ford van with this calliope that played circus music, and we took off cross country and we visited 50, 60 states. I mean, it was just, cities anyway, I should say that. It culminated when we got to Washington, D.C., and Jay had this huge list of names, signatures for statehood for Musylvania, and we got into the van and we were accompanied by Pat Humphrey, who was Hubert Humphrey's daughter-in-law, who was the NBC rep. And Jay was driving the van. She was next to him, and I was sitting in the back, or hiding in the back is more like it. And we got to the White House gate, and the man said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Turn off that music." And Jay said, "Well, you know, we're here to see President Kennedy. We want to stay there for Pennsylvania." And the guy said, "Turn around and get out of here." And Jay said, "You know, you could be civil." I mean, I said, "Jay, turn around." He said, "No, I don't like his attitude." And, of course, the guy then started to unbuckle his revolver. And I panicked. I mean, I said, "Jay, let's get out of here." And Jay didn't like his attitude. He said, "Well, I will, but I mean, the man is absolutely rude." And we turned around and left. And that afternoon, I took the photographs that were taken of us in the car by the White House. And I went to the AP office, and I said to the man, "Look, we tried to get into the White House, and they wouldn't let us." And I thought Kennedy had a sense of humor and all that kind of stuff. And he said, "Come, let me show you something." And he took me over and showed me the photographs of the Russian ships with the missiles covered going toward Cuba. And we had arrived at the White House on the day of the Cuban Missile Crisis, so nobody paid any attention to us, even though we were very funny. And that ended the tour. Then we drove back home. Never did get statehood from Pennsylvania either.
Of all the classic cartoons that have appeared on television in its history, few have had the impact that Bullwinkle and Rocky have had on a generation of America's youth. It is safe to say that the series had a lasting and somewhat profound impact on those children who grew up watching it.
We never in the world thought that it would be the cult program that it was. Bill Scott used to have a marvelous saying that, because he was one of the brilliant writers, when we would go to festivals and make public appearances and so forth, and young people would say, "We love the show and I grew up with you," he'd say, "Well, you know, we've corrupted a new generation." And I think we are still doing that.
And propelled by mighty moose muscle, Rocky flashed clear to town, into the grocery store, and back before you can say Jack Robinson.
Jack Robinson!
Here I am!
By golly, I couldn't at that.
There was never a feeling that you were doing anything important. First of all, Jay would have punctured that balloon very quickly, you know.
Sign here, fella.
It's a college scholarship.
Oh, scholarship?
Certainly. I can see at a glance you're brainy.
Yeah.
You're intelligent.
Yeah.
You're brilliant.
Yeah.
Then why don't you sign?
I forget how to make a B.
We knew that we were entertaining ourselves, which is always the best thing you can do. If you can make yourself laugh, it's a great audience. And we never wrote down to children or at a certain age group, and it was just trying to do the best you could. And as I say, the parameters that they had were just to be wild and imaginative as can be.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Open up my sleeve. Presto! No doubt about it. I gotta get another hat.
If you first watched those shows when you were a kid, one of the incredible experiences in growing up and going back to them is this light bulb that goes on as you realize what the gags are all about.
Bullwinkle, you can't enter the race.
I'd like to know why not. The rules clearly stipulate no human over 10 can participate. I'm about as inhuman as you can get.
You're a moose.
And that's another reason.
There's so much joy that was in my life because of Jay, that there's an emptiness now that it's hard for me to express. But you know, Jay Ward, I'm getting the chills. Jay Ward really was the kindest, most gentle, funny human being I've ever been associated in my life. How do you thank somebody for a million laughs?
And here on the soggy shores of Pennsylvania, we find our heroes Rocky the Flying Squirrel and Bullwinkle Moose.
Boy, what a terrible place.
Only too true. Pennsylvania is the wettest, soggiest, dreariest place on earth.
You forgot useless.
Useless, too. Situated directly between the United States and Canada, Pennsylvania has the distinction of being constantly fought over by both countries. The U.S. insists it's part of Canada, and Canada insists it's part of the U.S.
But why do we come here on our vacation?
Because after 2 weeks in Pennsylvania, any place else in the world seems like heaven.
Send me to Siberia, send me to Wilkes-Barre, but not Pennsylvania.
No, Badenov, don't lose your head.
I'm not losing my head.
You will if you don't go to Pennsylvania.
What time leaves the next submarine?
Well, our heroes have certainly had some terrible shocks in more ways than one. For just as they were about to be rescued by a Coast Guard ship, the vessel tossed a couple of death charges at them. Rocky and Bullwinkle had disappeared. At the Coast Guard, jubilation reigned.
Good show, Carruthers. They're gone.
Thank you, sir.
Send this message to Washington. Sighted sub, sank same.
But, sir, somebody already said that.
Nonsense. If they liked it once, they'll love it twice.
Yes, sir.
But just then, there was a splintering crash as something flew in through the window. Something with antlers.
On top of something with an aviator's helmet.
It's a moose and a squirrel, Admiral. They must have been blown here by the depth charge.
Then they're enemy agents. Seize them.
And our heroes were quickly subdued.
I was pretty subdued when we started.
All right, you. What was the name of your submarine?
Submarine? Hokey Smoke.
Got that, Carruthers? We sank the Hokey Smoke.
Last time, you remember, the trustees of Wassamata U were wondering how to keep their college from going bankrupt.
How about giving an honorary degree to Danny Warbucks?
You ninny, he's only a make-believe character.
We're real?
In the end, of course, they followed the lead of so many other colleges. They decided to get a winning football team. As a result, 2 scouts are trying to sign a Bullwinkle.
Bullwinkle, you know who these fellas are?
Pick and Pat?
No.
Gallagher and Sheen?
No.
Null and Void? Fair and Wormy?
No, they're scouts.
If they're scouts, let's see 'em rub 2 sticks together.
They're football scouts.
Then let's see 'em rub 2 footballs together.
Let's check the little old rule book, Edgar. Uh-oh.
Trouble?
Says here we can enroll anybody except a moose.
Let me say that. Oh, Chauncey, that doesn't say moose.
No?
That's mouse.
Hot diggity! Well, the old place is back to subnormal, Rock.
Yeah, and we... Hey, was that a shot?
Heck no, Rock.
Well, it sounded like a shot.
Nope.
Then what was it?
That was the end.
By George, he's got it. It is the end. But watch for another episode soon of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
It may be a little hard to find, but don't give up.
We're not.
Agenda, we're just talking baseball for the next half.